Yeah.
Well, there we go. All right. Well, welcome everyone. It's great to have you all on our session today. I'm going to just show you the agenda that we're going to be following, but I'm not going to leave this up for the whole session. We're focused today on communicating with members. I am going to just give you a little overview of what we are planning to cover, which is basically this. Hold on one second. And Wendy will welcome everybody, and then we will spend several minutes, a good amount of time hearing from Mary Ellis, providing office guidance on this topic. And then both Paul and Rebecca, who are experienced volunteers, will be sharing some of their tips from their perspectives. Paul is both an experienced driver, but also, um, I don't know why that's happening that way. Hold on one second. Here we go. But also provides tech help to our members. And so that's a great perspective. Rebecca is both a very consistent driver and also, oops, I'm sorry, I'm really screwing this up, but also has provided other kinds of services. So that's all I'm going to bore you with in terms of our logistics. But let me go ahead and introduce Wendy as our executive director. And she is going to go ahead and provide a welcome and then turn it over to Mary Alice.
Hi, everybody. Thanks so much for joining us. When we were all in the business world, this would be a lunch and learn. Um, but I'm sure that nobody's actually going to be eating people don't eat on Zoom anymore. Um, Thanks for joining us. What we have experienced over the past couple of years is just an increasing challenge in terms of communicating with our members. And that we think for the most part is a reflection of the fact that our members are aging. No surprise there. But people who were 60, 65 are now 70, 75, 80, and into their 90s. And their skills with technology just don't tend to keep up um, with what their needs are. So in the old days, when everybody had a landline at their phone at home, you knew you could pick up the phone, call, get somebody, you'd be able to talk with them. Now, with the number of spam and scam calls that they get, their phones ring all day long. They tend not to pick up their phone because they think everything is going to be someone trying to sell them something or steal their money. That then means that the call may go into voicemail. If it goes into voicemail, it may say voicemail full, and that's frustrating to all of us. Or it goes into voicemail and they don't know how to get their voicemails, and so they're not responding to that. Certainly, those problems get exacerbated when we're talking about cell phones, and for some of our members, flip phones, not even talking about landlines. So we've just recognized that it is getting more difficult to communicate with our members, and we want to figure out solutions to that. So one, it's being aware of what the problems are so that you're not frustrated when you encounter one of those problems. Think about ways that we can solve those problems and make communication easier. Um, and then, let you know that if you continue to have problems, the office, Mary Ellis, myself, Cindy, Caitlin, there's a whole slew of people here that want to help you solve problems if our general guidelines don't work. There's always individual outreach that you can do with us to talk about solving problems with our members. So between our members getting older and technology getting more sophisticated and more spammers out there, we just recognize that we've got a communication problem. We want to address it head on. We want to see what we can do to fix it. So as we go through our session today, there will be lots of things that we'll talk about because we know about these problems, but as well, there are probably issues that you see that maybe we're not aware of. So we do hope that this will be an interactive conversation and that all of you feel the opportunity to raise a concern or a problem or experience that you've had so that we can either one, give you some suggested solutions, or two, recognize we have one more problem that we have to solve. So with that, thank you so much for joining us. And let me turn it over to Mary Ellis.
Yes, thank you, and welcome everybody again. I'm just going to talk a little bit about how we collect information on our members, and kind of what we do and what volunteers can do when we have a situation where it's a little bit hard to reach someone. So when a member joins, we of course get their contact information. We ask them to give us as many options as are available. So home phone, cell phone, email. Are you okay with texting? We try and encourage folks to give us multiple options. For some, that works. For others, they have one phone, they have a landline, and that's it. So it just kind of depends. But when they join, we do ask them to share with us their preference. So even if they do have email, they may not use it, they'll give it to us, but still that preference is to please call them on their cell phone, something like that. So we collect all that information and put it in their record, and that's what gets sent out to you when you're assigned to a service. So in the confirmation email, you'll see their preference listed at the top. And then in a lot of cases, it's really helpful to look in the special instructions because there may be a little more detail. Maybe if they have both a home and a cell phone listed at the top, if you look a little further into those details, you'll see that they prefer to be reached on their home phone. Cell phone is just a backup if you can't get through. Or there may be other kind of accommodations or parameters that they've shared with us. Please only contact after 12 p.m. Or as Wendy alluded to, this is a common one, member screens unknown callers. Please leave a voicemail with your name and number, or please send a text first. So it's very helpful to look in those special instructions for a little extra guidance on what that particular member is comfortable with. So once the assignment has been made, the office will contact the member and we tell them your name. We don't give them your phone number. If they ask, we will share the last four digits of your number so that they, if they screen calls, they can expect to look for those numbers when you reach out. But otherwise, we just give them your name and tell them to expect to hear from you. So once you've been assigned, I think most of you all know this. I see a lot of familiar faces and veteran volunteers, but please do contact the member within 24 hours of being assigned. In some cases, if you're assigned, on a Monday afternoon for a Tuesday morning ride, of course, call them as soon as you can. So use your judgment in those cases. Once you've reached out to them, if you leave a message and don't hear back, certainly make reasonable efforts to reach them again. Give them a little time to call back. Maybe send them a text if that's if you see that they use a cell phone. Try a different time of day. Over the course of a day or two, if it's not, if it's not an appointment or something that's coming up the next day. Make reasonable efforts. And then if you still can't get in touch with them, definitely let the office know. So if you reach out to us, we may be aware, maybe they have a phone number listed that we didn't send out in the confirmation. We can try. Sometimes members will pick up if we call from the office because they recognize the office number. And so we'll certainly do our best to reach them too. If, you've done all you can, the office has done everything we can, and there's still no word, in most cases, we would consider the service canceled, and then the office would follow up with them. And so it would be out of your hands and in ours. In a case where, like I mentioned, it's kind of a short notice assignment, especially if it's a ride for a medical appointment, maybe you were assigned after hours and you can't get in touch with the member, it's an 8 a.m. pickup. And you can't reach the office, in a reasonable amount of time to have us act on it. We do hope that you will still show up for that ride. If it's a medical appointment, if it's scheduled, even if you haven't gotten confirmation from them, it's best to assume that the service is still needed. And so, although it can be a little bit of a gamble if you haven't actually gotten in touch. It's better in the case of a medical appointment that's important to go ahead and show up. Let's see. So that's kind of a basic overview. of what happens here in the office. And of course, we can't account for every single situation, but the bottom line is, when in doubt, contact the office. And in most cases, I will say, for all of the challenges that do come up, in most cases, it is fairly straightforward to arrange a service with a member. So I will just put that out there, that while, of course, we work with people and these things can come up, in general, it is a straightforward process. So none of this is meant to give anybody the impression that you'll never be able to get in touch with a member and it's always going to be a struggle, because that's certainly not the case. So I think that's probably enough from me.
Mary Alice, I have a question. I have a 312 area code. So every volunteer, every member that I call to arrange a ride typically don't answer, because they see 312 and they think it's a scam or a spam. So there's always that back and forth, which is a little bit tricky, particularly if it's one of those that I get late in the day and it's a pickup the next day. Is there any way we could note on our files that we are willing to share our phone number with the member? I think you said we only give the last 4 digits, but if we agree to provide our number, do you think that would be helpful? I get a little nervous sometimes when it's 8 or 9 at night and they still haven't returned my call.
Yeah, no, it's definitely a good question, and members members would love to have your number in advance. I think the way our current system is set up, it would be a little bit difficult we can certainly make a note in your record. But because there's not a good way to automatically kind of include that once the assignment has been made, it may not happen that the office staff making the assignment would necessarily see it, just because of our current database.
What if she just mentioned it when she responds and picks up the call? You'd have to do it every time, but if you did that in your responding email, then that might make it easier on an office volunteer.
Yeah, I could do that.
Yeah, exactly. And that would be my best suggestion, is that I know it's a little bit cumbersome for you to have to do that, but when you're offering, to just mention, and that way we see it right away, and whoever's making the assignment will know to mention that to the member.
I could do that. Okay, great.
Great question.
But that points out one of the new features that we're seeing more and more frequently. It's still rare, but we see it, which is if someone gets a call on their cell phone, but that person's name is not in their contacts list, your phone won't ring. So Mick, as much as you're suggesting we can give out your phone number so that perhaps they could call you directly, for some people, they're not going to get that call because the person's not in
That's
contact.
right. Yep.
And this is one of the challenges that we'll talk about as we dig a little deeper into this. I don't want to bring it up too early. But there's a little bit of technology is just running faster than we are right now. So it's something to keep in mind.
Well, it's something to keep in mind for the drivers too, because I did have a situation a couple months ago where I had changed my settings so that people not in my contact list could not ring me.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't work when you're a volunteer driving people. So I've learned and I've changed it back. But when I was driving somebody and she was trying to call me that she was through with her appointment and it wasn't coming through. And it was an awkward situation that we were able to resolve. But we as volunteers also need to make sure we don't have that setting on.
Very good point. And, we probably want to include it in a little bit of our training.
Yeah.
Certainly perhaps in our handbook, but also in the one-on-one training and orientation that we do. Thanks, Mick.
Mm-hmm. Any other questions for Mary Alice? Rita, yes. Hi.
Hi, I'm Rita. I'm a relatively new volunteer. I think I'm on request number 4. My question has to do with the safety of drop off and pickup at Virginia Hospital Center buildings and members' ability to maybe change what they're used to doing. Last week, I encountered a situation where I got to the outpatient pavilion, and oddly enough, there was an ambulance unloading a patient. two cars trying to back out because of the ambulance. And then a fire truck associated with the ambulance pulled in behind me, and very little space in that square shaped roundabout to get out. And, you know, so um, so the client, the member wanted to help and like positioned himself between my car and the ambulance. And so I got him inside, and that's fine. And then anyway, it got resolved. Cars, we all maneuvered and eventually got out. But I called Virginia Hospital Center and spoke to their security office, and they suggested something, but I wondered if the members, based on your experience, could handle this. They said that the parking garages are free for the first 30 minutes, and they would be free both for drop off and pickup. But my question is, first, would our older members who are used to for years being dropped off the front entrance, can they handle if I say drop them off in the garage where it's safer, and then ask them to come to the garage entrance, but not go into the garage and wait for me there? Um, that's the first question. And then I'm sorry. What happened last week is that because of all this difficulty and the member really wanted to help out, so I said, please meet me at the garage entrance of the outpatient pavilion. And I think he just maybe worried. So he went out across the medians to George Mason. And so I picked up like the most dangerous possible place as all those cars pull into. So anyway,
So Mary Alice,
I guess finally, my other question is, in your experience, would this work in all the various garages? I know that the outpatient pavilion has lots of space, but what about the 1715 building and the Blue Zone building? Is this going to be too confusing? So those are my questions.
Mhm.
Yeah, what a situation. It sounds like you you did your best to try and manage some of that unexpected stuff. I'm going to give you an unsatisfying answer, which is that it depends. So if you are assigned to a request at VHC or some other office and you know it well enough to kind of anticipate that you might prefer to go into a garage entrance or something different, when you call to confirm the service with the member, you're more than welcome to mention that and ask them. You can let them know, in my experience, it's a little bit safer when I've taken other members. I found it's really easy for me and for the member, if I go into the garage quickly, and that's where we do the drop off and the pickup. Some members may be perfectly happy to do that. Others may not be so comfortable. So it's really, I think, just a matter of discussing it with them and, trying to find some compromise that makes you both comfortable.
I think you have to keep in mind, first of all, Rita, the experience you had at the pavilion was unusual. Not never happens, obviously, but unusual. So you don't want to sort of develop a whole new strategy based on a one-off. My comment too is that I think garages are sometimes confusing. People know how to get to the front of the lobby entrance and to the lobby. If you have to go to a different elevator, what level are you going to, et cetera. I wouldn't make this your standard operating procedure to do the garage drop-off. It certainly might work with some people. But as an SOP, I think it raises more challenges than it solves.
Yeah.
I also think that at VHC, some of the garage entrances don't have any seating available. So if you told them you were going to pick them up there and you were delayed, too many red lights or whatever on your way over, they wouldn't have any place to sit. I think in that new building, there's nothing in that garage entrance lobby where they could actually sit.
All right, let's
So
see
that
if
would be my thought.
are there any other questions on the guidance that Mary Ellis has provided? And if there's nothing specific to that, we want to shift now to invite Paul to provide some of his tips, not just from the driving service, but also from the window he has into the technology assistance that members seek and how that might influence communication. So we will certainly circle back and have an opportunity for more questions, but Paul, go ahead.
Okay, thanks, Cindy. I have a couple of general observations and then some just random tips and tricks in no particular order. I would say that as far as tech support goes, in particular, the two things you've got to be are patient and flexible. You're going to run into people with basically no technical ability at all. And or you may run into somebody who has an Alexa in every room and uses it to do everything that they need to do. And so it's you've got to first sort of assess the person's skill level in terms of what they need. Somebody might not even be able to work a flip phone to enter a contact, and you got to push the button 3 times to get the letter you want exactly. Other people have a problem that stumps me, and I have to use AI to figure out the issue. So I guess I sort of combined the two observations: patience and flexibility. You've got to be flexible in what you do. Sometimes it's a complex problem for somebody who doesn't have any real ability, and I would say, just solve it as best you can without trying to really teach them something if it's complex. On the other hand, if the person seems to have the ability to absorb some training, don't just fix it, but show them how you fix it. And it's just it's the kind of thing you have to suss out when you get there and figure out what their level of ability to learn would be. As far as driving and tech support, I would say one thing is to emphasize communicating by text. That's always helpful. And I share my contact information with the people I help, and I enter their contact information in my contacts. So if they contact me, it's going to show on my phone who it is, and also I have a record of them in the future if they call. I also use Notepad on my phone to keep track of each person I visit and jot down the time and miles, which saves a lot of time when you report your time and miles. If you put the person's name at the top and then the number, the support number, and then the date and the time and miles, you can just copy and paste that into an email, and then just next time you help them, you just put the new date at the top, and then you have a running total of everything you've done for them. And especially with tech support, it's helpful sometimes to recall what you did and what the problem was last time, because sometimes there'll be months between visits. As far as some other tips, I would say ask people to make a list of what exactly their problem is. And especially if you're doing continuing tech support for somebody, on a monthly basis or whatever. If they keep a running list of their problems, then first of all, they don't forget anything. And it also defines what you're going to be doing for them that day, and that you can see what all their problems are and prioritize your time accordingly. And then there's another general rule that, as far as tech support goes, that I try to teach everybody, is that if they do have a problem where they're phone or their laptop has just stopped working, it's always a good idea to just turn it off and turn it back on again. It really does solve a lot of problems, especially with any kind of a computer. And nowadays our phones are computers. Let me see if I got anything else. I think that might be it. But in terms of giving people your contact information, I haven't been doing this actually, but I have a bunch of old business cards that I'm going to start giving people to just have it handy when I drop them off or when I stop by their house. And one last idea too, if you do have a continuing technical support relationship with somebody, um, I especially recommend that they just text you if they have a problem, because a lot of times that just saves everybody a lot of time, and it's easy to do. Um, yeah, that's about it.
Thanks, Paul, and thank you especially for mentioning the idea about the cards. We are going to implement the suggestion that has come up a couple of different times with getting just general, blank, not blank, but A&V business cards that drivers can use to put their own phone number on and then hand out to the folks that they are driving as an easy way for you all to reconnect at the end of a service for the ride home. So that's something that will be coming and available for you all to pick up if you're driving folks, which would have both the A&V office number on it, but then you could just write your own phone number down and make it an easy resource to have. Another thing that occurs to me, Paul, based on what you mentioned, is that for many members, tech support volunteers should be a great resource. So if you have had trouble reaching a member to provide a different kind of service, like a ride or any other thing, and that your experience is that it's just been a challenge to connect with them, feel free to mention that tech support volunteers are available, and that to make that request. Of course, they just make it like they would any other request and contact the office. We have lots of tech support volunteers, and they are very happy to provide all kinds of different services. So that should be one little tool in your toolkit for helping to improve a member's overall experience, because if you have had trouble reaching them, so are other people, their doctors, their friends and family. Other folks are going to run into the same challenges that you did, most likely. And so getting somebody over there to help out with tech devices might make a big difference for them in outside of the A&V world as well. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to add a little bit to that. Again, drawing on all of our personal experiences. Sometimes I agree with Paul that patience and flexibility matters, but sometimes you also get to be pushy. There have been times that I've been trying to help someone, haven't been able to reach them, and I just say, I will sit there right next to them and dial their number, and nothing happens. And it's like, why is your phone not ringing? I'm calling you. And then it's like you grab their phone. You don't grab it, you ask. But in one instance, somehow she had switched her phone to airplane mode. She didn't know how to do it. She didn't know what she'd done, but that's what it was. And as soon as you turn off airplane mode, what a surprise, her phone started ringing. So I agree that calling for tech support is great, but sometimes you have enough skill set yourself, and I'm certainly the Luddite in this crowd, that you can do a little bit of digging to see what's wrong. I mean, if you got a message that says, the cell phone is full of messages, ask her if it's okay if you start deleting some of those voicemail messages that she has, so that you can free up some space in the phone while you're waiting for the more formal tech support to be called in. But I'm only noting that patience, flexibility, and pushiness. Somehow we can figure it out as 3 Ps, I'm sure, but sometimes it's helpful. Because some of the problems they're having, we can lessen the impact of them with a little bit of effort on each of our parts.
Good point. Okay, let's turn it over now to Rebecca, who is going to share some of her additional tips and best practices for communicating with members.
Great, and I just figured out how to turn my mic on. Just as a follow-up to Paul and Cindy and Wendy's comment, and thank you. Briefly, yeah, I find that if I'm comfortable in a situation where I believe the member is struggling with IT, I ask if I may use their device and try and figure it out. And I think I'm the worst Luddite, the biggest Luddite here. And if I'm not able to do it, that's when I then suggest, please call the office. There's ample IT. And so often these people light up like Christmas trees saying, I didn't know that. Especially if these are members who've been members for years and years and years. You know, sometimes you're not up to date on all of the services are, and maybe that's something that can be highlighted. I don't know, in a future newsletter that goes out saying, and don't forget about IT. Anyway, I'm going to be brief on some of my comments about tips and practices. Some of this, bear with me, and it's worth repeating and emphasizing that once assigned, read the ticket. Then predicated on how the member prefers to be contacted, whether it's a phone call, either landline or cell phone, or email, or text. Contact them as soon as possible. Many of our members get, in my terminology, can get a little twitchy. And obviously, everybody has lives. You're not able to jump on that right away. But call them as soon as you can and reassure them. And when I do a couple of things. I print out. I'm not as technologically as capable as Paul is. I print out the ticket. So I have it as a record with my notes on it, what's going on, the miles, the time, and all of that good stuff. And when I call them, when I speak with them, or if I leave a voice message, I then tell them that I look forward to seeing you on such and such a date. I've been assigned. I give them the time and where we're going. So again, it just reinforces, it's engaging them too as they think about their appointments. Because for a lot of these people, they've got a million medical appointments in particular. And keeping those calendars straight can be challenging for them. Then I tell them that I will call them the day before the pickup, because whether it's Snowmageddon or something, or doctor's vacation times or something, appointments get changed. So I say, it's just to confirm that the appointment is still coming on. As a reminder, I'm coming. And then I tell them that I will be showing up in a white SUV with my flashers on. I will be calling you the day that I leave, next day for their appointment, and I give them a relative ETA. And for members for whom it's a first time I've had them, I always tell them I tend to show up a little early just to make certain I know where I'm going. But I say, take your time. I say, I'm here to help you. There's no rush. If I'm there a little early, I wait. Therefore, those individuals, when I make those calls, the first call, and leave a message, you don't know, it may not be in the notes that a member may be hearing impaired. So I have a tendency of speaking slowly and lowering the cadence of my voice, which makes it a little easier for someone who has hearing issues to better understand me. I've had people say, oh my God, you're the first person that's ever called me that I've been able to understand right away. It's rare, but it does happen. For those people who are visually impaired, I'm going back to the business card thing. I just, with a Sharpie right here, I just write on the back of my business card my number so the visually impaired can readily see it. It's available to them. Those cards are a great tip to have. When they're in the car, then it's about agency and engagement. When I talk to them, I say, first of all, are you too hot, too cold? Do you want the sunroof open or not? And then they feel like they're part of it. Do you want to give me directions, or do you want me to rely on my navigation system or something? And they pretty much much know what they want to do and how they want to get there. And then when talking to them, most are very, very conversational, but ask them open questions, the how and the why questions. So that they've got to think about it a little bit and be an active listener and follow up with questions. When clocking out, again, on the printout of the things, I always jot down my notes on it. And when you clock out, I have the member, here's my time, here's my mileage. Also, any observation that rise to the level of things that you think both the office needs to know, and the office will judge whether or not that information is something that's useful for other volunteers to pass on, so that when you get the next ticket, this member, recently stopped using a rollator and is now using a wheelchair, for example. And I think I'm within my 5 minutes, and I will stop there.
Thank you, Rebecca. That's actually a really good reminder for everybody, is that volunteer feedback is so important. So the office does their best to keep the records up to date based on their experience, but volunteers are, you guys are the ones who are having the daily interactions with these folks. If there's something that you think could benefit another volunteer, the next person to, take them grocery shopping or be in their home for whatever, task might be at hand. Feel free to share that with the office in the time and miles report, or if you think that there's something that needs more immediate attention, just pick up the phone and give the office a call and let them know what your experience was, so that they can decide how to handle it. So it's not your responsibility to follow up, but it is your responsibility to share your observations with the office so that they can make the judgment about whether or not follow-up is warranted. Mary Ellis, is there anything that you would add to that before we move into a general opportunity to talk about best practices and have questions?
I think we covered a lot. I do thank you, Rebecca, the piece about the reminder phone calls. So helpful. It's not required. We ask volunteers to, of course, make the initial contact and confirm everything, but it is so helpful, especially if you were assigned several days in advance, and you call them that day and okay, pick you up next week. It really is, I think, makes a big difference for members to get that extra call, even if it's not necessarily when you're on your way, to check in with them again and make sure everything's all set. So yeah, I think that's about it for me.
Okay, so let's open up the conversation now. Is anyone interested in sharing either a question, or Nancy, let's start with you. I see your hand going up, and you can feel free to either.
I have a couple of questions,
Okay,
couple of questions later, but this is something that I've kind of learned the hard way, is that one thing is asking the member to check, especially like for the drop-offs and for medical, is to check to make sure they have their cell phone before they come, and also to make sure I know where they're going to be in case they really forgot their cell phone or it's not working or something. I've gotten stuck down in the lobby or in the car because the office wouldn't let the person go because there wasn't anybody to pick them up, and I didn't know where they were and they didn't have their phone. So it's just one extra thing of, could you check and make sure you have your cell phone, and what office are you going to be in case I need to check on you or something like that, because it's otherwise you don't know what to do. So.
Good point. Did you have another question or?
I have a question. So I have a couple of pretty complex members that I drive that are sort of, connected to social services and have social workers and things like that. And occasionally, one of the guys will disappear. They'll lose their phone or end up in the hospital or end up just sort of falling off the radar. And so I don't know whether, and sometimes I overcorrect, whether to copy a staff member when I reach out about, I don't know where this person is, or if the office, if the volunteer person says, oh, I can forward that immediately. I don't want to overkill on who I copy, but what the best practice is on that.
Yeah, I would say anything you send to the main office account will reach the person it should.
Okay.
Yeah, so if you send something, that will either be forwarded or, everybody on staff has access to the main and
Okay,
checks the
so if
main
something
office
comes
account.
up that's sort of odd, then the volunteer will send that over. So, okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
it'll be flagged.
Okay. That's good.
Those changes that we send with the Miles report, any volunteer in the office will update it in the database? Or it has to be in a specific person?
Yeah,
when-
using the office address is always the right first thing to do. Mary Alice, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say that. Yeah, sending time and miles to the main office account with or without commentary is definitely the right move. And if it's just a standard report, with no concerns or no feedback that we need to worry about, that will just get entered like usual into the members record or the request record. If there's something that we flag for follow-up, then, that may be treated differently. But yeah, main office account.
And also, do you do like a yearly checkup of the members' health? Or things that have changed in their life? Do you do that?
Yeah, so we, as Cindy said, rely very heavily on you guys to let us know if you've observed something worrying, especially if it's a member that you've had experience with before and you notice a change. When members are renewing their membership for the next year, that's the main yearly way we get information and updates from them. It is only once a year, but that's the most official kind of format. Otherwise, it's what we hear from you guys. Or, we have some members who will, self-report and let us know of updates themselves, or a family member might. But yeah, it is mostly our volunteers out in the field.
Question?
Sure.
I'm a brand new volunteer. I've had only 2 assignments thus far. Can you clarify for me at what point we start recording time, start and end recording time and mileage?
Yeah, so we consider your volunteer service to be from the time you leave your house to the time you get back to your house.
Got it.
For both time and miles. That's called portal to portal. And so that's all volunteer service as far as we're concerned. It doesn't mean you have to like run your stopwatch or anything, but it's an estimate. But yeah, from the time you leave your house to the time you get back.
Good. Thank you.
As we're sitting here talking about the things that went wrong, it's only happened once to my knowledge, but make sure you're picking up the right person. There was an instance, I think at Culpeper Garden, where one of our volunteers pulled up and someone jumped into the car and they went off, and only when they were arriving at a medical building and the person says, "What are we doing here?" did they realize that the person they picked up wasn't the A&V member. So it's always a fun story. It all got worked out. That person got a free ride somewhere. But there's a little bit of making sure you've got the right person when someone's getting into your car. This is the joy of being in the office. We get all the weird stories.
I would just I think it was Nancy, maybe. Is there a Nancy on the call?
Yeah.
Okay, yes. I think it was Nancy who mentioned and reminded us, and I'd just like to reinforce that as you drop the member off, make sure you have at least what physician's office they're seeing, something, because I've gotten stuck in that too, where I never heard from the member was going to call me when she was through, and it was supposed to be anywhere from a 45-minute to an hour. And 3 hours later, I still hadn't heard from her. And so I actually it fortunately was at one of the smaller medical offices than the hospital. And I just started going through and knocking on the door of the different offices and asked if this patient was there. Turns out that she had to have some extra tests done. So she wasn't through yet, and it was taking a lot longer. But I was panicking that this woman was somewhere and I didn't know how to get in touch with her. And I literally went door to door. So it's really helpful.
Right.
So this may be a good chance to find out if what I'm doing is annoying to the staff. So there,
It's
that I drive
not.
a
Whatever
lot.
you're about to say, it's not.
Yeah, and they'll say, "Oh, are you free in 2 weeks? Can you take me back to the dentist? I've got to go again." And so I'll always say, "You've got to call the office and get it on the schedule, but tell them that I'm happy to drive and they can go ahead and send me a confirmation from that." But is that annoying? Would you rather I not do that, or is that okay?
No, that's fine. And you are absolutely right to direct them to us. Even if you are available and you haven't been imposed upon and you're happy
Yeah.
to do it. Yes. When
Okay.
those situations come up, make sure it comes to us.
Okay. Right.
And in most cases, even though you've already told them that you will, we'll still send you a note and say, "Are you still available for
Right.
this?
Does that still
Are
work?
you
Yeah.
sure?"
Thank you for that. Thank you for that. Because sometimes you never know. There's a
And
couple of
Nancy,
them.
to be fair, the other way sometimes it happens is you yourself will call and say, I gave XYZ a ride. They asked me if I could do this, in 2 weeks. I said yes, and again, it happens both ways. More frequently, the first way you described, the member staying in the habit of calling the office.
And it's good for them to know that that's their
Yes,
job.
right. They need to follow the
Oh, yeah.
process, but you may be dealing with someone where you think their skill set isn't so great.
Yeah.
And the other way that happens is sometimes also not the 2 weeks future, but a medical appointment that ends up saying you need to come back the next day for some kind of follow-up.
Right.
So even more important that there probably isn't time to sort of run it through
Yeah.
the office by them directly.
But it does reinforce that it is very important to be sure that every assignment that you have is recorded against a specific service request number. And insurance is the reason for that. Insurance coverage is the reason for that. So you are, A&V's policy is secondary, of course, to your own policy, but if you were doing something that we couldn't find a record of in the system, we would not feel as confident about the insurance coverage for any mishap that might occur during the course of that service. So that's one important reason why we want to be sure that all requests end up being directed through the office at some point. Preferably in advance, but if not in advance, at least a follow-up phone call from the member or from you as a third option, just to be sure that there is a record of it.
So if it's a recurring person, and like last week we tried to pay the rent on Monday and the system was down, and so we went back on Thursday to try to pay the rent, except it didn't work, and so we went again. But that, I assumed that was the same number, so it's
Yes,
recurring. So
yes. As long as
yes,
if the service hasn't been completed for scheduling reasons, whatever reasons, it's still an open service request, and there wouldn't be a concern about that.
Okay.
Anybody else have any questions that we can cover, or any other particularly helpful strategies that you have used? Maybe not even for a driving situation, but anything else that you've found to be useful for folks in terms of connecting with them and communicating with them around services.
Hey, Cindy, this is Terry. Hi, everybody.
Hi, Terry.
I think it was Rebecca who mentioned she asked the members, if they have their cell phone with them.
Yes.
I always do that. I always ask if they have my number, and they always say they do, but a couple times, of course, they didn't. So I started to tell them on their way out of the car, I'm going to call you. Just ignore the call, but it will be the last number, hopefully, on your phone. So when you're ready for pickup, just go ahead into your recents and dial. And that's helped at least 3 times in literally the last couple months.
Great idea. I think in general, what we've heard is that we can't rely on members to be able to find your phone number in their call, recent call log. But if you're using that idea, Terry, I can see how smart that would be, which is to just call them and then it would be the very last one and they would be refreshed about your phone number. Good idea.
One thing I forgot to mention in terms of being flexible with people, I've had at least one or two situations where the request for tech support was almost beside the point. It was something really simple, and I realized that the person was really looking for somebody to talk to. Just have a conversation with. And maybe they didn't feel comfortable asking for a friendly visitor, or they didn't know that that was an option. But, sometimes the problem is real easy to fix. You can be in and out in 5 minutes, but it's good to just hang out a little bit too. And if you feel like they want to just, spend some time with somebody, you should recognize that and, be flexible.
And just building on what Paul says, and I think someone else mentioned, just having a conversation with someone when you're in the car with them. I invariably ask, what their career was, what their work, what did they used to do? And you start hearing stories and, it just ends up being a lovely conversation on the way to a medical appointment. So it just ties to this that oftentimes the people that we're helping are, in an apartment or a home behind a closed door for so much of their lives, and the connection that they're making with you for what seems like a ride to a medical appointment is much more than just a ride. It's a connection that's so meaningful. And for that reason, we're so appreciative of all of you and all the work that you do to help all of our neighbors.
Cindy, I have a question.
Sure.
I primarily call members once a week at this point. And I wonder, do the drivers, when you go out, do you talk about the services that we provide as AMV for friendly visitors or friendly phone calls? Because I'm just seeing there's just not very many requests for those kind of work comparing to asking for rides to medical doctor's appointment. And in terms of this, I'm just thinking out loud.
Yeah.
Are there a lot of people want to do the phone calls and the friendly visitors to members, or they don't? Because I'm just thinking it's such a wonderful thing for anyone who is stuck at home. They don't have to wait until the medical appointments to talk to someone. But if there are other members, such as myself, I'm very interested calling people, visit them when I can. And so I just wonder, what is AMV's policy promoting friendly visitors and friendly callers?
Absolutely, we want to promote 100%. And Emily, your comment, made me think of what we might be able to do. Maybe next time we do volunteer connections, we can, provide an attachment that volunteers can download and print out so that they can hand it to a member when they're picking them up for a ride or doing some other kind of service. I mean, we have a handout now that talks to our weekly activities, whether it's bocce, tai chi, bowling, billiards, all the different weekly activities. And we have another handout that speaks to the services that we offer. But making those more readily available to volunteers as an attachment to volunteer connections is certainly something we can easily do. And then measure the impact, get to see more requests coming in from folks.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I think the drivers can do a lot of selling about that.
Right.
So if the
Absolutely.
sellers
Mm-hmm.
remember to mention that's also part of the service, that might be helpful.
I think that's
Absolutely.
a great suggestion, Emily. my impression is that we do have a lot of volunteers who are interested in providing those services. I know that when they are advertised, they get taken right away. So there must be a lot of great,
Demand.
yeah, I think probably less demand from members than we could support. I mean, we could support more through our current volunteer corps than we do. So I think it's great for all of you on this call to feel very free to promote the other kinds of services. And we've done that from time to time, like with our Valentine's Day mailbox project. You know, there was a flyer in those mailboxes that went out to a subset of members promoting the different kinds of services that volunteers can do. So there's other ways throughout the year, but you guys are the ones who see folks on a regular basis, and you're great ambassadors for the full range, not just of services, but also social events. You know, are you going to the Thanksgiving dinner? Have you thought about joining, you know, one of the other activities? Sometimes people just need a little bit of a nudge, you know, and you're in a great position to be able to provide that little suggestion.
Hey, Cindy, this is Terry again. I think that's a great idea. I've been bringing my walking buddy to the ladies' luncheon and, you know, talking to a lot of the women. A lot of them, I don't think, understand a lot of the details associated with things such as transportation. In their mind, it's strictly medical. And when one of the women sitting at the table that myself and Susan were sitting at, she said, "Well, I took a cab here today." I said, "Well, you could have put a request in to see if somebody could pick you up and drop you off." I said, "You know, I did that for Susan here." And there were a lot of ohs, you know, around the little group I was in. You know, so maybe it's a little bit more detail of, you know, does Friendly Visit, do they want to go outside with us? You know, or do they want to ask for somebody that has been approved for transportation for maybe a cup of coffee, you know, at a coffee shop somewhere? They didn't realize that they could get a little bit more specific on some of the requests, you know, and if they're volunteers, you know, able and willing, we'll do it.
Great point.
This is a very helpful suggestion about the friendly visitors and phone support. On my very first assignment, it was a woman in her mid-80s who's very with it. And afterwards, she asked if I could continue driving her. And I mentioned, you know, she could contact the office, but she said, perhaps you would join me for coffee. And it would have been if I hadn't realized I was my first time, meant sort of feel out, would that there's this service of friendly visitors, or would that you be interested? So anyway, there was a little clue there.
Yeah, I think that is, I wonder how much that happens in general, but I also, you know, I don't think there's certainly no reason not to, if you'd like to, you know, follow up on that idea later and reach back out. You know, I think sometimes there is a blurry line between the services that volunteers provide and then just the connection that you all make on an informal basis, and you might be getting together outside of an A&B service request. And as far as I'm concerned, that's great, but I don't know if Wendy or Mary Alice would have any clarification that they would want to offer.
My only clarification is usually when I give someone a ride, I break all of our rules and say, is there anything else you need? And do you want to go through a drive-through? You know, do you want to
Oh
get
my
a soda
gosh,
at
that is
McDonald's
so
or a cup of
bad.
coffee? You know, I break every rule, so I shouldn't be saying this on this kind of a call.
I'll
And
let you take
invariably the
Sean to
person
Burger
says
King
yes.
and get his 12 Whoppers when we go and do that.
Right.
All right, well, we're drawing to, it's actually 1:02. I want to be respectful of your time. Is there anything else, in terms of follow-up from this session? We will post the recording and share that link with the rest of the volunteer community so that folks can take advantage of it. We will also, Mary Alice has been working on some written resources around this topic that will be posted online as well. I would like to remind you all that there are other training resources on the volunteer training page, including a link to the session that we did last year specifically on driving, on serving as an A and B driver. But also there was an in-person session in March about assisting our frail members. And there's written information available on that, including how to use the car door assist device that you can pick up from the office if you are a regular driver. Certainly for medical appointments, that proves to be very handy. So check out that volunteer training page, and we will keep that updated as we offer additional sessions. Also, if you found this helpful or interesting and you have any other topics that you think would be helpful for us to pull together a session on, please share it with me by email, and we'd be glad to consider it. We're certainly interested in offering sessions that are of interest to volunteers. Rebecca is now the co-chair of the newly reinvigorated volunteer committee, and we would love to have additional members. So feel free to reach out to either one of us and let us know if you're interested in providing a little bit more expertise and also ideas on things we could be doing to serve the volunteer community with A&B. We would be happy to think about how to do that in all sorts of different ways. So, Mary Alice or Wendy, any other parting comments before we close?
I've learned to keep my lips
think
sealed
so.
for all the rules I break.
No, I think we appreciate you guys being here and for all you do for our members. I'm impressed every day by what you guys will do. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Appreciate your time
That was
today.
helpful.
Good.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.